Hmm. Hmm.
You're hiring inexperienced people to go out and turn it off. When it was cut off for 8 weeks, I didn't even get a shut off. I didn't even get a knock on the door. This woman came in, the water had been shut off, and she's got this flyer that has, all these different numbers for the what's called DRAP, the Detroit Residential Water Assistance Program. All these phone numbers. She's like, I'm going to call these people. I sat down, I called all the numbers. Each one was disconnected.
Mm.
I've also spoken to people whose water was shut off, and they say they never received any kind of shut off notice.
This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for July 27th, 2022.
Welcome, 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 beloved community. We are back again with yet another installment of the People's Water Board Coalition's Water Wednesdays webcast. I'm here today with my co-host, Valerie Jean Blakely. Can't forget our behind the scenes tech people, Lou Novak and Rosalind Walker. And today we have the pleasure again of having a very special guest. He's a champion of the people. He fights for rights of our communities. And he is an awesome, awesome attorney with the ACLU, Mr. Mark Fancher. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on, and you have some very vital information for our viewers today.
It's my honor and my pleasure.
Thank you so much for being on. And you kind of came on last notice, so really,
yeah,
we wanted our listeners to really be able to be thinking about all the ins and outs of what's happening right now as far as water affordability in Detroit. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. Hammer on, and he really kind of broke it down on the history of it and the blatant racism of it all. And so we wanted to follow up with you to really talk about all the behind the scenes things that people just don't know that's happening. I don't think that people know that we have a lawsuit going and things like that, and that the PWBC is a plaintiff in that lawsuit. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about that lawsuit and why it's important, what it is, why it came about?
Oh, certainly. This is actually the second lawsuit that we filed as a class action. Sister Hill was present for the first one. And it ended badly for us, not just because we lost the lawsuit, but because when we appealed it to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, they took it upon themselves, even without prompting, to include in their opinion their view that water is not a fundamental right. I mean, for most of us, that just seems common sense. I mean, you can't live. That's like saying that you don't have a right to breathe.
Right.
I mean, you have to have water, but they said that it's not a fundamental right, and that left us, very nonplussed and confused about where to go in terms of the law with this. And what we ultimately concluded is that if we can't assert that water is a fundamental right, then we should look at what the courts have identified as what they believe as fundamental rights. And we should find a way to include water as part of that. And what we determined is that the courts have acknowledged repeatedly that everybody has a fundamental right to bodily integrity. And basically what that means is that the state, the government, does not have a right to, invade your body in any way without your consent. And we have, in this lawsuit that we filed, asserted that denying people water is a violation of their right to bodily integrity, not because the state is forcefully injecting directly things into people's bodies, but what they have done is that they have cleared the way for the body to be invaded by those things which are going to harm the body, those things which are going to infect the body. Infectious agents are now allowed because people without water are unable to take the precautions necessary to prevent infection. They can't wash their hands. They can't maintain personal hygiene. And so it's, for all practical purposes, the government saying, here, germs, go into these people's bodies. And so the significance of identifying a fundamental right is that it allows us to file a claim for what's called violation of substantive due process. And that's a very fancy sounding legal term, but what it means is that it's related to what we generally refer to as procedural due process, which means that the government is not allowed to take away your life, liberty, or process without giving you a chance to come in and fight it and to have a hearing and to explain why they can't do that. When we talk about substantive due process, we're talking about rights which are so fundamental that there is no procedural process that the government can establish that would justify them coming in and taking that fundamental right away from you, unless they have an extraordinarily good reason, a compelling reason to do so. And so the right to bodily integrity has been identified by the courts as one of those rights which is so fundamental that it doesn't matter how many hearings they give you, it doesn't matter how much procedure or process they give you, that they can't do that, without compelling reasons. And so that's one of the claims that we make, that shutting off people's water on a mass scale violates the fundamental right to bodily integrity. We also have included in the lawsuit a claim for violation of the Fair Housing Act, which is based on racial discrimination. As I understand it, Professor Hammer was on and he explained how blatantly racist the water shutoffs are, where the shutoffs happen almost exclusively in Black communities. And we say that as a feature of the Fair Housing Act, there is a claim that we can bring and that we have brought, which says that this type of discrimination is a violation of that law. So those are the primary claims that we've raised in the lawsuit, and which is pending now. And the relief that we seek, what we're asking the court to do, is to enjoin, which another fancy word for stop. We want the court to end water shutoffs as a method that the DWSD uses for purposes of collection or for any purpose.
It's so important that people know that this is happening, and that that it was brought about by people who had experienced shutoffs and things like that, and that's why we fight so hard like this. And so good that we have lawyers like you on our side. So what's happening now with it? What's changed in the last few months that people should know about?
Well, with respect to the lawsuit itself, not much has happened at all. When we filed it, we sued not only city officials, but we also sued the governor. And that there's a whole other story as to why we sued her. But right after we sued, they filed motions with the court asking that the case be dismissed. We responded to it, to their motions, and we had arguments before the court as to whether that motion or those motions should be granted or not. And we've not yet received a ruling on those motions. And until we do, the case really can't go forward. The next phase of the lawsuit would be what's called discovery, where the parties to the litigation are able to request from the opposing parties evidence and information that is relevant to the lawsuit and that can be used potentially as evidence in a trial of the case. So we've not been able to do that. We filed not too long ago a motion because we knew that the end of the voluntary moratorium that Mayor Duggan imposed on the city was going to come to an end at the end of this year. And when he first announced that, he said that they were working on their own program to end shutoffs forever. And at the time that we filed the motion I'm about to tell you about, we had not received any information about what they were planning or what they were doing. So we filed a motion asking that the case be submitted for mediation, and that as part of that mediation process, that the city come forward with information about whatever it is that they're planning. And that at the time we knew nothing about it. We had received no information about it. You know, we suggested to the court that if they're planning something that's effective and that it's going to work, then what's the point of having the lawsuit? You know, we just need to know about it. And if we know about it and we like it, well, maybe we can just settle the case.
Right, wrap this whole thing up.
Yeah,
Like, you know.
absolutely.
But the response of the city was, we ain't telling you nothing.
Secrecy.
Like, you know, we have more important things to do. We're too busy to come and sit and mediate. So that too has been left with the court to make a ruling and a decision. So since the time that we filed the motion, the DWSD did come forward with the announcement of the Lifeline program. And we know what you know about that. We approached the city again and said, okay, you know, you've got this program now. You just sort of outlined the bare bones of it and, you know, the primary features of it. You know, can we get the details and the particulars? We got lots of questions.
We got lots of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the response once again is, we ain't talking to you. So,
Right.
so we're as
Which
as
is so
legal-
frustrating because they're actually telling community and like on the news talking about, we have consulted with community on this. No.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then during the meetings, community leaders that have fought in this area, in this of work for decades, were like, just give us 45 to 60 days to review it to see if it's, you know, up to standard. And they sat there and said, well, you know, they basically didn't have to, or they weren't going to do it. And
We
then
still
they
haven't
turned
seen
around-
the bones. We still haven't seen the details of it.
And then
Still.
they turned around and said they would give us 60 days, but they voted on the plan that very day to pass it. So, you know, it's a moot point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and in fairness to Gary Brown and leadership at EWSD, we were invited to hear the initial presentation, but that's about the extent of what we've been able.
Just a PowerPoint.
Yeah, we got that, but there's a lot there to ask questions about.
Yeah, we need the details. There's you can't even. Yeah, and they don't have the infrastructure to actually roll this thing out. Nothing.
Yeah, and it should be made public.
At this point in time, it's
community
just
is aware.
Yeah. At this point in time, it's just talk. It feels like just talk. So as far as so we're sitting tight with the lawsuit to see if we can get some sort of transparency on what this looks like. Then that's the situation we're in.
Well, yeah, and really, as far legally, the circumstances have not changed as far as we're concerned. The lawsuit was filed for purposes of ending water shutoffs.
That's right.
That's what we want to do, and that's one of the big questions that we have about the Lifeline program.
Because it's not doing that.
Yeah, even though they say that, you know, for people who enroll in it, that they are in no danger of being shut off, then there is a question I have, which is, suppose somebody enrolls in the Lifeline program and for whatever reason, they still don't pay. What are you going to do then? You know,
right.
Do you still plan to not shut them off? If you do plan to shut them off, what happened to this commitment that you made that you weren't going to shut them off if they enroll?
I mean, Gary Brown said during the presentation that this is not going to end water shutoffs.
Right.
This is not he knows that. And even though, like you said, in 2020, the mayor said, we're coming up with a plan that is going to end water shutoffs. And that's not what we got.
Him, Gary Brown, and the mayor, in fact, stated that they would have to reinstitute the shut-off process in order to meet federal requirements to receive the monies to fund the Lifeline program.
Mhm.
Yeah.
People had to be in shut-off status.
Yeah. And the bigger question is, what about the people who don't enroll? I mean, they were very upfront about the fact that those people are still, subject to having their water shut off. And, how many people does that impact? They don't know. I mean,
The
because
vast majority.
there are so many people, at least we know anecdotally, who would be very reluctant to come forward and provide information
No
about
choice.
their personal circumstances to the water utility for whatever reason.
Right.
Maybe they've got insecure immigration status. Maybe they are just trying to fly below the radar for a whole host of reasons, and they're just not going to do it. And so we're back where we started in
Mhm.
terms of shutoffs being on the table and available for them to use, and from what they're saying that they will use.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we in that respect, the litigation is still the same in terms
Yeah.
of the need for it and the objective that we pursue as being a viable, one that is very much necessary.
Yeah.
And this
And
is
it's really,
very frightening
it
because,
is, I was about to say that this shit is
Yeah.
scary because
because
at the end
I
of
don't know
December,
if
yeah.
you
sorry.
have paid attention in the meeting, Valerie, but they were saying that even if this program is implemented, they're going to start out with people who phased out of the RAP program first. So that leaves the whole majority of people who maybe didn't qualify for RAP or didn't get on the RAP program that may still be in a status where it's unaffordable for them. And then that's just going to leave them blowing in the wind when they institute the shut off policy again.
You're looking at mass water shutoffs at the end of December when this moratorium ends because people couldn't make their ends meet. And if it was a bill that they didn't necessarily have to pay and they didn't have to worry about it getting shut off, they didn't pay it. I know a lot of people like that. Like they were struggling to pay anything, right? And you've got people who are, you've got 2-3 families in a home and everybody's having a hard time making their ends meet. So it is really scary. And if we don't have something in place that says very clearly that we're not going to shut people off, we're just going to end up in unprecedented moment of water shutoffs. That it's
going to be horrible. I have neighbors that have 3 generations living in a household because they've lost their homes.
Yeah, we're all in together because you don't have affordable housing, and everybody's stuffed into the house together, which is why this rationing plan and the Lifeline plan itself won't work because it's based on 2 to 4 people in a house, and that's just simply not the life of most Detroiters right now.
Don't forget, you can only drink a gallon of water a day.
Yeah, they allotted a gallon of water per person. Like, if you got children and things, they're going to drink more than a gallon of water.
Or a baby that you have to make formula for.
Yeah.
Problem. It's a problem.
They're looking at the shortest route to recouping some of that revenue that they lost through shutoffs and through the bankruptcy, and to make sure that these bondholders are insured a payment instead of looking at the route that best serves the community.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the community's memory won't be short about all of this because the contradictions are so stark. We from the very beginning, certainly in the lawsuit, and for you and for everybody else that's been working on it, been doing it even longer than we were doing it, in terms of advocating for an affordability program that was indexed to income. And it is a basic, very simple concept, which is look, there's so many people who just can't afford to pay market rate for water. Just can't afford it. Never will, never could. And if you expect them to pay regularly, then you're going to have to charge them what they can afford. Very simple concept.
Yeah.
And it should have been one that they embraced and that they did the work necessary in order to come up with something that would be effective. But what we experienced for so long was the response that it violates the state constitution for us to do something like that, and we will never do it. I mean, they said that they would never have an affordability plan that's indexed income based on what's called the Headley Amendment in the Michigan Constitution, which says that for any tax that a municipality imposes, it has to be approved by the majority of the voters. And they pointed specifically to a court ruling called Bolt versus Lansing in support of their position that they took. And for anybody who's honest, who's read Bolt versus Lansing, it says exactly the opposite of what they were saying that it says. And that they could do it all along, but they refused to talk in detail about why
there was no will.
They
right.
did. And anytime we talked about an income indexed affordability program, can't do it. It's unconstitutional. We can't do it. And we're not going to violate the law. Why do you think that? Well, we don't have to tell you. We just aren't going to do it. Right. And then we're adamant about it for year after year after year. Now, all of a sudden, they pop up with a Lifeline program, which is not what we want, but it is a program that conceptually, indexes income, to the rates that are charged.
Yeah.
So what happened? How all of a sudden, the law has not changed. But somehow they've been able to do it because their agenda has changed.
Right.
And so
there was no will before.
Right. And to do it. And even though we're not where we want to be, I think that for everybody who's been involved in pushing them, that we should understand that this is a victory in a skirmish, that they have recognized that we have no plans of stopping in this. And so they're in retreat. This is their effort to try and come up with something that looks on its surface like what we've been demanding. Okay, that's an indication that we're winning. That they've been pushed into a corner and they know that there's no way out. And so this is a last-ditch desperate attempt to try and get out from under this thing without going full scale with what we're demanding. Yeah, and they're hoping that it will work. But the thing that I don't think that they fully appreciated is that that none of us are going to stop. It's not like just because they put this thing out here that we're going to say, oh, okay, it's all over now. But I think we need to understand how much of an impact all of our work has had.
That's right.
I think that's exactly correct what you're saying. I remember speaking at the meeting, and the first thing I said in my public comment was, thank you for letting us know we're doing something right, because you literally took what we've been saying verbatim and used it.
To sell it to people.
Yeah, to sell it to people. And they just sat there and just looked. They were so distraught that
totally using our language.
That.
The other thing that's interesting to me is if they actually think that they're going to be able to pull off this lifetime affordability plan.
That's the part. Yeah.
They can't do it without us. They're not the trusted person in the room. Community leaders are the trusted people in the room. They can't implement this without us and our help, and us actually helping them sign people up for it.
Right.
So they don't shot themselves in the foot because they gave us something that we didn't want. We have to fix it. It has to be fixed. And then if they actually want to get it implemented, because we're the trusted people in the room, they're going to have to come to us, and we're going to have to help them do it.
And it's kind of a matter.
I spend a lot of time doing intake calls with the People's Water Board.
Yeah.
And some of the saddest stories I get doing it. But so I know that they can't do this without us. Wayne Metro doesn't have the infrastructure to sign that many 25,000 people up. Come on. They don't have it. They don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So that they're gonna have to fix it so that we can help them get it implemented.
Absolutely. And the thing is I think it's, I've been saying this all along after, of course, I did just as you suggested, Mark, and I read the Bolt versus Lansing precedent, and it showed, I think what it boiled down to with the city of Detroit and DWSD is just that they realized we had a viable plan, a good plan, but it wasn't their plan. And that was the issue. It came from
what they wanted
instead of from them. And they weren't going to get the full on credit for it. That's what I think it's all about. Who gets the accolades for creating this affordability plan? And really that's not what's important to us. What's important to us is that we have water affordability and safe, accessible, clean water for everyone.
And that nobody gets shut off.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's it. I mean, nobody gets shut off from here on out.
Absolutely.
That's it. Except for corporations.
Well, yeah.
Comerican Park can get shut off. I don't care.
Absolutely.
I don't care.
And they won't, and they probably
won't.
They won't.
Mike
Village, he passed away owing for Joe Louis Arena. It's not even, open anymore. And he still has a defunct water bill for it that's not being pursued at all.
Yeah, the last I looked, like Comerica Park owned just some ungodly amount of money. It was like $100,000 or something. It's been a year or so, but
yeah,
they were like in the rears with their water bill. Like it was insane. I was,
and they're able to dispute it as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when we can't get from the courts, just a basic understanding of these contradictions. In the first case that we filed, we said that we filed what was called an equal protection claim, which basically means discrimination. And it wasn't a race discrimination claim. It was based on discrimination against residential customers versus commercial customers.
Mm.
We showed what you just talked about, that we had a whole long list of corporations that owed 6 and 7 figures for water that, was unpaid, and none of them had been shut off.
None.
Then we had lots of residential customers who owed, $100, or less or whatever.
$50.
Yeah, and they're getting shut off all the time. And we said that that's discrimination. And in order to bring an equal protection claim, you have to establish that the entities or the people that you're comparing are quote unquote similarly situated, that they're basically the same. And so the court ruled against us, saying that these even though, as far as we were concerned, residential and commercial were the same, all of them received water and all of them were expected to pay for water. The court said they're different. And so when asked why they're different, without any testimony or evidence supporting this, the judge said, well, because it's harder to cut off a business's water than it is a house. Now, how does he know this? And why does he think that?
and what kind of, show us you don't care about people without saying it. Like actual people, you're talking about people with families. It's a life or death sentence if they don't have water. Nicole didn't have water and she's still sick years and years and years later from it. Still.
Absolutely.
How dare you say that the corporations are more important than people?
Like,
what kind of moral
how hard
compass
is it?
that? Right?
How hard is it to take that key and go to the curb cock for that business, stick it in there and turn it to the left and the water is off?
Exactly.
The same thing that you do at every residential location.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The furniture store doesn't have water. Okay, so when customers come in, they can't get a cup of coffee. That's the extent of it.
And the thing is, and this is what we argued, is that the reason that DWSD, or one of the reasons that DWSD has always given for shutting off water, is that it would provide an incentive to others to pay, so that if neighbors see somebody's water getting shut off, if they owe water too, they say, oh, that's going to happen to me, so let me go and pay my bill. That was the rationale, which makes no sense anyway, because if they don't have the money to pay it, how are they going to pay it? I mean,
Right.
That's the fundamental question. But we said, if that's the logic that's involved, then why don't you use it for the commercial customers? For a couple of reasons. One, if you shut off the water to Joe Louis Arena, then all of these other corporations are going to go, wow, they're going to do that. We better pay, and they can pay.
They can.
They can come up with that money. And think of how, if the purpose is to keep revenue flowing, money flowing in to DWSD, how much of a difference is there between getting hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars from these corporations that all of a sudden have gotten religion and decided to pay for their water, versus getting these little pennies and dollars and hundreds of dollars from these little residential customers, assuming that they're going to be moved to come and start paying. And while at the same time you're paying out millions of dollars to Harwich to go out there and to pay, it makes no business sense. It makes no practical sense. Even if you want to go there in terms of the arguments that they make. So the whole thing is filled with absurdities. And, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't care about people, if they have water or not. The only reason we got a moratorium is because they figured, well, COVID's going to spill out from these Black people in this city to the white people right outside the city. That's the only reason we got a moratorium.
Yeah, Detroit is going to be the COVID capital.
Yeah, and I know we're running over, so I'm not going to go on a long, but that's the only reason we got it. And now it's really, really scary when we're about to end at the end of it. It's getting scary.
Yeah.
Mark, really, thank you for coming on.
Well, can I say one last thing though?
Please.
Sure.
We really need the community's help as far as the lawsuit is concerned. And let me tell you specifically how you can help us. If you personally are in this situation, or if you know somebody who would not come forward and enroll in the Lifeline program, they just would not, for whatever reason, please report it to People's Water Board or somebody who knows how to get in contact with us. We can go in and speculate and say that there are probably a lot of people who won't sign up, but that's not good enough. We need to know from people who are talking directly with families affected that once this program is in effect, that they're not going to sign up for it. We need to be able to credibly say that this thing is going to be ineffective. So if to the extent that we can have people who are able to come in and to say, we've talked to so many people who are not going to sign up for this thing and who are going to be subject to water shutoffs, that would help us a lot. So if everybody who's watching could do that, that would mean a whole lot to the efforts that we're making.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I almost forgot to ask what people could do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so community,
the anger of it all.
You have your marching orders. We know what the ask is, and it's a simple ask where everyone can get involved. I'm pretty sure we'll be willing to keep anonymity if need be. Nobody's reporting anybody. We just really want to know what's going on in the community and how you feel about this program, and it can push forth this lawsuit that can help our entire community.
Right. At this point in time, we all got to come together, and if you call the People's Water Board, I have the intake phone. We're going to be very careful and gentle with your story. Yes, absolutely. Please share this out so that folks can start thinking about what this means for them and what it means for us as a community, and ways for us to come together and really demand a real water affordability plan where nobody gets shut off. Until next time, my friends, check on your neighbors, check on the people that you love, check on your enemies if you have to. But try to take care of each other and try to stay afloat. Bye.